Hey, we all have hectic lives, and buying or selling a home can just make things even more of a chaotic mess. If you are moving to the Austin area, what would you need to get comfortable with that decision? Even if you lived in town and you needed to purchase or sell a home, how would you want to be treated? Chris Ott with the Ott Group of Keller Williams Realty has been a longtime friend and was the guy who I worked with to find the perfect property solution for me. I wanted a professional with knowledge of the Austin area to help me with my home search, navigate the paperwork, and negotiate on my behalf. And Chris Ott was the right agent for the job. Chris, his business partner, Teresa Ott Busseau, and their team of 5 agents have helped thousands of people move to and from the Austin area. The Ott family is celebrating over 35 years in business in Austin and plan to provide their real estate services for many more years to come. Their mantra is, your move matters, and that is what they focus on. Just go to their website at theottgroup.com and get connected with the Austin real estate team dedicated to taking care of you. That's THEOTT group.com. You can also call 512-222-6881 or email them at info@theottgroup.com to get connected with them today. Tell them that Stephen with the Parent Portal Show sent you and start working with a professional who is dedicated to your next move. And prepping for the call with Mike. So here's the thoughts with Mike Hammer. I want him to give us advice to parents, first-time parents who are trying to figure out what little Johnny or little Susie wants to do, when they should be getting started in sports, what should they be doing, what kind of research, what should they be looking about, what sport should they be considering. Tackle football is kind of on the way out, and just kind of that whole research and thinking point for kids and parents who are trying to figure that out. That's question one.
Okay.
Question two is kind of the discussion about as your athlete matures, as they continue to go up that path, as they continue to get better, there becomes a point where you have to make a decision, or you may want to make a decision. Well, little Johnny's pretty good at this sport. Should we invest in coaches? Should we invest in teams? There's the select ball, the select programs, the travel squads, all this thing where you can go throw a lot of money away and you can spend a lot of your life on the road traveling with your kids playing these sports. And is that, how do you gauge that? What do you look for? How do you figure that out? Or the flip side. So let's say little Johnny isn't very good at this sport, doesn't enjoy the sport, doesn't enjoy getting out on the baseball field. Is there a time when you need to, cut the ripcord and say, that's enough of that sport, and try to figure that all out? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's I mean, we're in the middle of it. You've kind of gone through it with your boys before, but we're in the middle of it right now where 8th grader going into high school, and oh, by the way, they enjoyed being in the band, and they're on the swim team, and they love playing football. Well, those three do not mix in high school. One of these things does not look like the other, and they are given a choice to pick one because, quite frankly, you can't be in the band, you can't play football at the same time. This isn't 6-man football in small town Texas. You can't march at halftime and take a snap in the third quarter. It just doesn't work that way.
Yeah. So that's another question that we'll cover. And then, let's not get too scripted. Why don't you, as we're talking, if you've got a question, let's work on between the three of us, let you ask a question or two, and, we can kind of keep it flowing that way. Does that feel comfortable? You feel
Sure.
up to that? Okay. All right. So that's enough about Mike Hammer. Let's talk a few minutes for our 4 articles. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yep. I sent you the one on the Utah Collectives NIL upsetting the.
It that wasn't really a article. It would just look like text for me.
Yeah, it didn't copy over well. Here it is, Coach. I'll give it to you now.
Okay.
Sorry about that. It's an On3 article. So I'll talk you through it because I feel like I can lead on this one. So their program, 85 trucks to 85 scholarship players, not a single female in that group caught the attention of Bay Area
Wow.
based Arthur Bryant of Bailey and Glasser LLP, who happens to be one of the top Title IX litigators. And he said, quote, he is outraged over what he calls a blatant, in-your-face case of extraordinary sex discrimination. What do you think of that?
Why?
Because there's no females involved. It's
Well,
basically, well, I
yeah,
mean, the way
okay.
Title IX works, you have to have equal funding for equal programs. There's a whole equation behind that. There's a whole go ahead. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I don't know all the specifics, and I think we talked about this Utah program in an earlier episode. And one of the things that was intriguing to me was these were individual sponsorships, or was it, did I misinterpret it and it was for the entire team? Because if it was
The entire
individual
team.
sponsorship, yeah, I think the difference lies just right there in whether Title IX comes into play. Because if the quarterback gets an individual sponsorship for a Dodge Ram truck, right,
Yeah.
and the running back gets one, and the whole team enters into that, and if I remember, it was a rental. It wasn't a
That's right.
gift, I think. And so if that's the case, then these is the rental with the Utah program, or is the rental with Cam Rising as an individual? Because if it's Cam Rising as an individual, I don't think Title IX has anything to do with this, because he entered into an agreement with someone on his own, not as the Utah quarterback for the team. I think there's, in my
Well,
opinion,
I think okay. I'm
yeah,
gonna give you some counter argument here. Not
sure,
I'm trying to look at both sides of the equation here.
yeah,
So you are correct. The collectives, the donor driven collectives have been providing an overwhelming majority of their dollars to male athletes. You're absolutely correct on that. Title IX, which is a 51-year-old federal law, by the way. I couldn't believe it's been around that long. I remember it going in
wow,
play. It protects students from sex-based discrimination at any school that receives federal funding, stipulates schools must provide male student athletes and female student athletes with equal treatment and benefits. Now, the Crimson Collective is paying for the 6-month lease for each truck plus insurance, and they retail that out at about $61,000 per student, obviously.
okay.
The total cost of the deal is believed to eclipse $6 million, and the lease rolls over if a player returns the next season. So
So does that, excuse me, so does that, is that lease with the University of Utah, or is it with Cam Rising?
well, and see, this is where the complexity happens, right? So the legal experts are saying that it's a high profile of example of how complex the Title IX question is, and how the industry is kind of wrestling with the 2 years that they've been in this NIL stuff. But I think the courts are going to come down on the side of Title IX, because if it looks like a duck and quacks like a duck, you're discriminating against females by not having that same equal benefit to female athletes is kind of how I
Yeah,
think
that's.
it's going
I
to be.
mean, it's a great argument, and my gut feeling tells me that it's going to get a lot of visibility, and from that visibility, this athlete is probably going to have a lot of opportunities. However, I say again, if this is a collective that is not that is not um, affiliated, and I say affiliated,
Well,
not
be
affiliated.
careful because these
Yeah.
collectives end
Well,
up working as an extension of the university.
yeah, well, if that is true, if they do work as an extension of the university, then there are guidelines and rules and bylaws that they will have to go by. But if they are a collective that is out there and is raising money to be the booster
Yeah.
club, if you will, for
Yeah.
these things, uh, I don't know that the University of Utah has anything to do with it at all, because they can't, in theory, if they went and said, "Hey, we want you to spend $6 million on um, a pizza uh, a pizza advertising campaign," they said, "Absolutely not. I don't know that the University of Utah gets to come in and tell them what they do with their money. They may make all these recommendations, but I think the collective is able to come in and say, we're going to spend $6 million on trucks and leases." And Utah goes, "That's great. That's fantastic." And if that's the way that is set up, then I don't know that Title IX gets to come in and say, "Hey, collective, not university. Hey, collective, you're not being fair to um, everybody in sport. You're not being fair to female athletes, and therefore, we're going to sue you," kind of moment.
Yeah.
Because you still get the choice to how you're going to spend your money if you're not affiliated with the university and held to those guidelines, in my opinion.
Well, I think it's going to be the definition of affiliation, right? So you're doing something on behalf of the university. You're not doing it on behalf of the collective. The collective's not owning those athletes. They're not asking those athletes to show up and play for them. They're showing up and playing for the university. It's a very interesting. I mean, I think you could go down a big rabbit hole here. I mean, what if a collective said, "Hey, I'm going to show up and pay you not to play for Utah." Uh, now all of a sudden a Utah affiliated collective, you can't do that. So there's going to be some guidelines there and it's blurred lines. It's all gray area right now. But I think when the courts get involved in this, mark my words, about 2 years from now, when the courts finally do take this up, I think you're going to find that they're going to rule in favor of Title IX because it is that federal guideline is still in play. They're still getting federal dollars, and you're not going to see the government allow that kind of bias toward a specific gender. That could go way. I mean, just take it to the extreme. Now all of a sudden they say, "Well, we only want Jews playing for us," or "We only want," I'm being silly, but um, we only want certain athletes to play for us and have no accountability back to the university or to Title IX. That's not going to happen. There's going to be some.
Well, doesn't and I guess my rub on that might be at the very end of it, doesn't, if the university has that, that arrangement, doesn't the university have the ability to go to the collective and say, "We do not like the way that you're doing whatever you're doing.
Oh,
Stop"?
sure they do. Oh, sure they do.
So
Absolutely they do.
the university, if they have these agreements and arrangements, they have the ability to walk away from this and say, we're just not going to do business with you. We don't care how much money you raise.
Right.
They do. And so at the end of the day, I mean, there is some, if that indeed is the way that, they're interpreting Title IX, then there's some liability there for these universities to say, you either change, right,
Yep.
or we're going to stop. But the problem is all that money.
Oh, I get it. I
Yeah.
get it. Well, what you're now saying is Title IX is considered to be a burden at times on sports programs because you have to spend money and invest money into programs that are not an ROI source, right? So now all of a sudden you're investing into gymnastics, or female gymnastics, or gymnastics in general, and those funds don't get near the advertising revenues, don't have the return on investments that football does.
Yeah, there's my gosh, I can't even begin to know when women's basketball, as an example, um, started playing on the NCAA level. I don't know when that date was, and I'll have to do my research better to know that. The other part of it is if you're comparing women's NCAA basketball to men's NCAA basketball, and then doing cost comparison and what a program looks like and what they generate for revenue and what they spend in revenue.
No
I've got to
comparison.
believe that it's on two different
Oh, sure.
planets, and so it's is there a need for Title IX? I think so. I think there's value and worth in it. I think that for me, the tough part is like, where do you draw the line as a um, place that a private company or a private organization is being told what they have to do, not because they wanted to sponsor, an individual or wanted to sponsor a team. That's a very blurry line for me, and I'm sure it's that way for a lot of people.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there's a lot of challenges there, no doubt about it. All right. Well, let's jump over to Quinn Ewers for a moment and chat
How
about
about
our.
that? Call 44444.
Have you seen the commercial yet?
I have not. I just
I
read the
have.
article.
I
Oh, you saw
have.
the commercial?
I have. I saw it this last weekend. It's an interesting commercial. It's you can, from a production viewpoint, you can tell it's kind of split into two separate recordings. They got Quinn almost in a Zoom call. I guess that's what he's appearing to be in, is a Zoom call, and they're recording him talking to Davis about what number to call and all that stuff. And and it's a very positive discussion kind of thing, and kind of fun, having fun of changing his number to 4, uh, which is a creative angle on it, but a little hokey. But hey, it worked. Hey, Davis has got his name up there, and he's getting himself some quality commercial time. So uh, good for him.
Yeah, I mean, and there's a lot to unpack in this one for me, and here's why is that I've been hearing the the rumors about, does Quinn Ewers declare to go NFL or does he come back, right?
Right.
And so those drum beats are beating pretty loud right now, and word on the street is that he is 100% coming back next year. And for him, he's looking at this from probably, an endorsement of significant money, because right now he's sitting on 1.4 million in sponsorships that we know of, and he's looking at this and saying, well, if I declare for the draft and I go back to the draft and I don't go top 10, and nobody knows, right?
Right.
A third of the athletes in the or two-thirds of the athletes in the first round are not always, winners. And so, he's looking at this and saying, as a rookie, I'm going to get paid minimum, bare minimum, but I could stay at the University of Texas and increase my value and worth at least for one more year. And oh, by the way, I could create uh, my brand even bigger, so that when I do decide to go, um, it could be something that is more lucrative. And
Sure.
at the end of the day, He's sitting on this gold mine with Jeff Davis law firm going, hey, we could run these commercials not just for the next couple months, we could run them for a year.
Yeah.
And to me, it seems like that's a shrewd move, if that is indeed, and that's a lot of speculation, but
Sure.
he's done, man, he's done well for himself since he's left South Lake Carroll.
Yeah. Yeah, no, he's obviously he understands the NIL game, and he's figured it out and gotten himself some great deals. He will get graded out before he goes into the draft if he decided to do that. I don't think he's going to grade very high. He doesn't. I don't know. I've heard two thoughts on it. I've heard he's not a great NFL quarterback, but then again, well, I just my opinion is he's not going to be. I think he's going to be one of those quarterbacks that's just not going to go well in the draft. And, especially this coming year, right? So you come out of this and you got a lot of other higher graded quarterbacks. And why would you walk away from something that's paying you pretty well and you're
Man,
enjoying, right?
I, I mean, he's played for two of the most storied programs in the history
Yeah.
of college football with Ohio State and Texas. He has, I would bet he is in the top 5 of NIL deals that were out there and that are probably currently out there. If he was to come back, you got to say that he's going to be a Heisman hopeful, kind of moment. And the Jeff Davis law firm is maybe seeing the same thing, And oh, by the way, here's a chance that when he does go pro, we could be his legal representation. That's the part,
Is that what they're
it's
looking
all
for?
fun and everything else, doing fun commercials, but hey, we'll be your sport agent. And man, what a relationship they're trying to build there. In my opinion, that's just my opinion.
Pretty interesting. Pretty interesting. All right. Well, we'll see where that goes. It puts a new light on the whole Arch Manning discussion. Every time that Ewers quarterbacks, and every time they don't put Manning in, it's like, oh, he's going to leave. He's going to go to another team. There's 5 teams that want him now, and starting to make it into some of the sports threads too, or the columns, not just the threads and all the hype. And I get kind of tired of that. Manning's happy where he is. He's got the time to learn from some of the best and just become a great athlete. So I'm glad that next year it'll be a little bit different. I think there will start to be some pressure to get him in. But if Quinn Ewers is still around, then now you've got a relationship that's amazing.
You
Go
you
ahead.
do the math on that, right? You do the math. And so if Quinn just decided that he wanted to stay in college, right?
Yeah,
So you're the coach and you go, well, I'm going to tell you right now, Quinn, we're going to go with Manning. He's our guy. That's the only way we're going to be able to hold him, right? Is that, can you imagine how much money other teams will throw at him in the transfer portal to
yeah,
come play? I mean, they'll throw a lot of money at Manning to come play if Ewers stays, but I don't even think it'll touch what they'll throw you at Ewers. And I mean, it's a great problem to have if you're the University of Texas. That, I mean, you've got 2 of the most highly coveted quarterbacks in football,
yeah.
and how do you balance it, and what do you do to make sure everybody's happy? Well, that's not a bad problem to have. I mean, we've seen those years where we didn't have somebody, and everybody was screaming, "Well, you missed out on uh, Jalen Hurt. You missed out on you missed out on this athlete here. You missed." So I mean, you're not going to please anybody. But what a problem to have when you have 2 of the best,
Oh yeah.
and you're having to make a choice, if you will.
Well, and don't forget that Oh my gosh, why can I not think of his name? Who's been the backup the last 2 weeks?
Malik?
Malik. Yeah, he's going to go somewhere.
Yeah, man. Well, you know what? I mean, we're really just kind of talking out loud now, but
We're just
when I
hyping
first,
up the rumor mill.
yeah, I could do it. Well, I read too, right? So one of the things that I found very interesting about Malik is that I really went back and started crunching some numbers on him because he is a physical specimen.
He is.
I mean, physical is an understatement for a quarterback. And so I went back to his high school playing days to see what his rushing yards were, because I haven't seen him run one time under center, in zone read, anything. I haven't seen him run. And I would have thought he would have some phenomenal numbers, not even modest running numbers. He is a pocket passer. And I always thought he was a dual threat. And looking at his numbers, not even close. He is a pocket passer quarterback.
Oh, really?
And yeah, and I would have thought that if that guy tucked that ball and ran, he would run over people.
Well, he has a couple of times, so that's
but
interesting.
It's go look what his rushing yards are at the University of Texas, and you will be like, wow. Because, I mean, it's just not what I would have assumed as a dual threat quarterback.
Huh.
But, I mean, this year there were people screaming for him to come and go somewhere else. And I can only imagine what it's going to look like next year or in the transfer portal. As soon as that transfer portal hits, there's going to be some names that we don't like seeing in there. And there's going to be some names on other schools that we're going to be going, hey, how you doing?
Yeah. Well, Malik, to answer your question, he has a negative 18 yards for the 2023 season. So
right. So there you go. I mean,
yards.
yeah, it's just phenomenal. I mean, goodness gracious. I thought that guy would be, I'm not looking for 1,000 yards, but man.
Yeah, that's interesting. Interesting. All right. You want to shift over to this overlooked revolution in NIL rights, high school sports.
Which one is that overlooked?
The Sportico article.
Sportico. Yes,
overlooked revolution in NIL rights, high school sports. This is interesting. I haven't read this yet. I'm interested to see what we got here.
Can you give me a second to get something to drink?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, actually, I'm going to take a pause too. Hey, okay, we're good.
You've seen prices rise from the dinner table to the pump, but Allstate agents are seeing ways to save you money on insurance. From starting a new policy to bundling coverage or even driving safely, Allstate agents know how to maximize your savings. They'll share their knowledge as they help you personalize your coverage. Because when it comes to seeing all the ways to save, Allstate agents do it best.
Mike Hammer has over 35 years as an Austin area Allstate agent. Call 512-343-6994 or visit MikeHammer@allstate.com.
Savings vary, subject to terms, conditions, and availability. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates, Northbrook, Illinois.
This is the Parent Portal Show.